Friends, what will happen if the water on Earth runs out? The Earth suddenly became silent, the water had ended. The rivers or lakes once considered symbols of life now only had cracked soil and fissures. Fear prevailed on the city streets, people were screaming, running, and raising their hands against each other. The noise of electricity, sirens screaming, broken glass, a scene of apocalypse everywhere. You stand at home holding a cup and searching for water, taps are dry, there is nothing in the sink, and even the drinks in the fridge now seem like precious treasures. Your breaths are rapid, your heart is pounding, and you understand the value of every drop of water in your heart. Outside, life without water had suddenly taken a terrifying form. People were fighting for water. Crowds were running over even the smallest water sources. Children, old people, and youth all were struggling for water. There were screams everywhere, and peace and order were almost gone. Without water, the human body also began to react. Headaches, dizziness, fatigue, and intense thirst took control of everyone. The hot soil and dry air worsened the condition. The person who had drunk water a few hours ago was now also anxious. Rivers dried up, lakes cracked like soil. People who were swimming suddenly fell to the ground. Passengers on boats and ships who once traveled on safe sea routes were now stranded on dry beds. Large ships crashed on land and were destroyed, and human strength completely failed against nature. Fish and other aquatic creatures in the sea and fresh water reserves began dying within moments. Animals that lived in deep water had now lost their habitat. A cascade effect began. The food chain was being affected, and the ecological balance was completely disrupted. Urban people locked themselves in fearful homes. News anchors on channels were also worried because no one really knew how all this happened. Scientists speculated that water molecules disappeared due to some cosmic energy or unusual physical effect. Now only the water stored in safe bottles or containers remained on Earth. The water shortage also affected the electricity system. Most power plants could not operate without water, and power outages increased fear in the city. Crops were also affected, fields were drying up, and the soil had cracked. People began to truly understand the value of water for the first time. Every drop, every bottle, every particle had turned into a battleground for water. Nature showed humans that life is impossible without water, and then some underground water sources were discovered. A few local springs reopened, and limited water distribution began. Marine life, crops, and human bodies were all severely affected. The Earth stood facing a new reality, and humans had to struggle completely to save their lives. Some parts of the Earth became deserted. There was no sound of rivers or light of lakes, only dry soil, cracks, and scattered stones remained. People were enforcing strict laws in their regions for rationed water. Guards were posted outside every house to maintain order in water distribution, but fear and helplessness prevailed everywhere. The human mind was now making decisions under extreme conditions. Children and elderly stood in lines waiting for their turn for water, and every moment decided life or death. With the power outage, communication ended. People only communicated through hand signals and screams. Outside cities, the land had become deserted. Once green fields now had cracks, dust clouds spread in the air. Underground water reserves were being drilled and extracted, but this limited amount was only sufficient for a few days. Every drop of water was precious for human life, and a small rationing mistake could cost lives. Food shortages also increased pressure on humanity. Markets were empty, people tried to satisfy their hunger with plants and seeds. Water shortage killed livestock, and human survival reached its toughest phase. Rivals were fighting to seize small water reserves. Every group wanted to secure as much water as possible, even if it required fighting and looting. Streets were full of fear and terror, and human society was losing its basic structure. In some remote areas of the Earth, people were building survival shelters where limited water storage and food preservation efforts were ongoing. Leaders there had imposed strict rationing rules to ensure minimal people suffered from thirst. Globally, countries launched emergency water programs. Drilling missions and desalination plants were installed deep in the Earth. But due to lack of resources, machinery, and time, these efforts remained limited. Marine life was now destroyed. Whales and dolphins stranded due to lack of water, microscopic plankton disappeared, and entire ecosystems were at risk. This cascade effect was felt in every corner of the Earth. Psychological pressure on people increased. Constant thirst and uncertainty severely affected mental health. Small fights, mistrust, and fear spread everywhere. Then a ray of hope appeared from deep underground. Scientists detected new underground water pockets. This was a new hope for life for a short period, but extraction required large resources and effort. And every moment human life was in danger. The world had passed its greatest test. Water shortage had changed human society, environment, and every aspect of life. Water extracted from a few small underground reserves became humanity's last hope. Every drop now was worth gold, and people were forced to live according to rationing rules. Fields and gardens were again helpless against hard and dry soil. Crops that once gave life now lived only in memories. Livestock shortages severely threatened the human food system, and human bodies began to weaken. Cities and villages went silent for a while because people focused only on their survival. Every person knew the value of rationed water, and small fights decreased because the concern for saving life prevailed. Scientists and engineers continued extracting water from underground reservoirs. This water was limited but enough to keep human life alive for a short time. Several dangerous accidents occurred during extraction, but the lamp of hope was still alive. Environmental impacts were still severe. The Earth's soil became dry and hard, trees died, and the marine animal world was destroyed forever. Ecosystems could no longer return to their natural state, but humans had won the battle of survival. Water shortage also taught humans a moral lesson. People started sharing rationed water, small communities formed unity, and peaceful efforts for survival continued. The first drops of rain that came from small clouds felt like heaven to humans. Every drop was a hope for life, every bead was a message of God's mercy. People prayed, valued water, and small lights of life began to shine again on earth. Humanity learned that water is not only a source of life but also a symbol of ethics, cooperation, and survival.